Welcome to AutoCare On Air, a candid podcast for a curious industry. I'm Stacey Miller, Vice President of Communications at the AutoCare Association, and this is Traction Control, where we chat about recent news from the global to the local level and what it may mean to the industry, featuring guests on the front lines. Let's roll. I have with me today in the studio Paul Roberts, and I've been waiting a long time to get Paul on the podcast. Even though the podcast is new, he was one of the first guests that I really wanted to highlight and chat with him. Paul is the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Security Ledger and founder of SecureRepairs.org. I first came across Paul on SecureRepairs.org. Paul, you're also on the Fight to Repair Substack, which is a really amazing place to learn about everything that's happening with right to repair across industries, across America, and just following it from the beginning, what's really happening. So welcome, Paul. We're so happy to have you. But tell us a little bit about Secure Repairs and how you got into the whole Fight to Repair.
Good question, and great thanks for having me on. It's really a pleasure to be here. So Secure Repairs was a group I started about 5 years ago, and it really coincided kind of getting involved in the right to repair movement. It happened because like you said, I'm a cybersecurity journalist for a couple decades now. Started my own publication, Security Ledger, back in 2012. According to LinkedIn, this is actually the 12-year anniversary of starting Secure Repairs. Thank you. It just reminded me. So, and that publication was really focused around the security of the Internet of Things and kind of connected stuff. And, covering that and writing about it every day gives you this kind of nuanced understanding of the challenges around cybersecurity and connected devices. And kind of over time, I just started to gravitate towards this site to some of the sort of big questions around connected stuff, including this question around repair. So I was doing some research for a story, looking at the questions of repair and IoT devices. Ended up talking to Nathan Proctor, who, like me, lives in the Boston area, and he is the head of the U.S. PIRG's Right to Repair campaign, and was like, "Hey, why don't you come down? We're doing a Fix-It clinic at this library in Boston. Come check that out." And we got to talking about PIRG's efforts back then. This is kind of 2018 time period to pass state right to repair laws, and basically, one of the things he said to me is, cybersecurity is a big issue for us because manufacturers are coming into these hearings at state houses and basically just saying hackers and hacking, and the legislators are running screaming. If you pass this law, your state's going to be a, mecca for hackers, and they're going to use this information to, hack into everything, cars and, smart home devices and stuff. And I just knew that argument was not based on fact, that's not how hacks against connected devices work, that it's not about schematic diagrams and service manuals and, diagnostic software. That's not how things get hacked. And so I was sort of like, I've got a really good network of cybersecurity people, and my gut is they're pro-repair people too. Why don't I try and connect you with some of them? Maybe we can get some of them to turn up to these pre-COVID, get them to come out to the state houses and show up at these hearings and just kind of voice their support, and also bring their bona fides with them. I'm a lifelong cybersecurity expert. I understand this topic, in depth, and what you're hearing from the other side on this is just not backed up by facts. And so that was the birth of the Secure Repairs group. And 5 years later, we've got more than 400 supporters. And we have been able to, I think, make a meaningful difference in terms of the debate and conversation around right to repair. Most notably in 2019, Gary McGraw, who's one of our members, testified at the FTC's Nixing the Fix event on a panel around cybersecurity and repair. And Gary did a great job just kind of laying out this core idea that repairability and cybersecurity are not at odds with one another. They're not mutually exclusive, that you can have a device that is fixable, repairable, and also secure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We're so lucky to have folks like you advocating on behalf of across all the industries, right? Because I see posts about automotive, which is what we're talking a little bit about today, but
Yeah.
agriculture, personal electronics, medical devices, right to repair spans across all these different industries. And I think you've been touching pretty much all of those industries throughout some of your research and the stuff that you've been talking about online. It's so nuanced, right? Because we get asked a lot of questions. Well, hey, why isn't there just one right to repair bill across all industries and not just automotive, not just agriculture? And the answer is it's complicated, but there are probably more commonalities that most people would think, and it's just that authorized, certified repair, just making sure that the technicians are certified and they're trained. Repairability should exist across all those industries. Why would that be so different?
Absolutely. I guess the answer would be, do you understand how laws get passed in this country?
The scary
Like,
thing.
it's a scary thing. And, yes, an omnibus repair bill makes total sense because there isn't really a fundamental difference between these issues as you look across, kind of the problems facing home appliances versus personal electronics versus automobiles versus medical devices. Like, it's all the same problem, and the resolution, these, right to repair bills as they're passed, whether it's agricultural equipment or personal electronics or automobiles, don't look fundamentally different from each other. They're just narrowed to cover a certain type of device. What it's reflective of course, is the power of industry and industry money to kill legislation that they don't like. And so, from a practical standpoint, as you guys know, if you just cast a broad net with your legislation, yeah, if it passes, you've created a broad new right. But you've also picked a fight with a broad range of powerful, well-financed industries who are going to go to war with that, and try and get it killed off in committee, which is what happened with personal electronics right to repair bills for years, about 4 years before one finally passed at the very end of 2022 in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There have been dozens of right to repair laws, I guess, introduced across the states over the past at least a year, right? Am I wrong? Is it more than that?
Yes, 5. Depending on how you count, there have been 5 kind of what I would say broad or omnibus type electronics right to repair bills passed. The first, like I said, in New York, signed into law by New York Governor Kathy Hochul at the very end of 2022, like December 30th or something, 2022. And then in 2023, Minnesota and California passed actually more toothy, kind of powerful electronics right to repair bills that covered a much broader range of devices. And then this year, we've seen Oregon and Colorado pass also pretty strongly worded, pretty powerful electronics right to repair bills. In the meantime, there have been other bills passed as well. Colorado actually leads the nation in passing right to repair bills. They, even before the personal electronics bills passed, they passed one covering power wheelchairs to give people who are rely on a power wheelchair the ability to fix their own device or get they're an independent person to fix it. And they passed one dedicated to agricultural equipment as well, the only one in the country at this point.
Wow.
So there have been those as well. So that, depending on how you count, that's 5 or 7. If you count the auto right to repair bills in Massachusetts and now Maine, it's 9. So,
Yeah, and our bills in Massachusetts, I mean, it's really good. We need more.
Yeah.
Obviously, we need something federally, nationwide, across all these industries. But we're so thrilled about what had happened in Massachusetts, the successes that we've had in Maine, and trying to carry that momentum to the rest of the states. It was a really long and hard fought battle, but the will of the consumer, the constituent in the district prevailed. I think about and I look at news about right to repair in other even countries, and it seems like maybe Europe, a little bit in Asia, they seem more into repairability than the states. And why do you think that is? Do you have any thoughts on that? Just curious.
Well, it's like yes and no. Like you're right. If you look at kind of comprehensive legislation, federal, what we would think of as federal legislation, the EU is way ahead of us on this.
Mm-hmm.
They passed a right to repair law that applies across the EU. Now each member state needs to adopt it individually, but that went into effect a few months ago. And it's pretty good. It mandates a lot of stuff around length of support that you need to provide, needing to provide, replacement parts, needing to, allow people to, repair their stuff and so on. On the other hand, it is limited to a subset of devices,
Right.
and it is not comprehensive. There's the language of the bill doesn't really specify, as many of the state laws in the U.S. do, that the parts and tools that you provide to do repair have to be provided at an affordable price. That leaves the door open for manufacturers to just jack up the price and make it, impractical.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at a law like Colorado or Oregon passed, right, or California even, or Minnesota, those are toothier and stronger, really, than anything that's been passed in the EU in terms of Colorado and Oregon specifically ban things like part pairing, part serialization, that companies like Apple use to, bind a certain screen to a certain iPhone body. So you can't just take a broken screen off of one iPhone and replace it with, the working screen from a similar model. Outright ban that as a practice. EU hasn't done that.
Wow.
That said, you're right. I feel like the conversation around things like concepts like circular economy, not just, reduce, reuse, recycle. It's really, we should really be focusing on the first two of those, and recycling is kind of a last resort. And I feel like the EU is much further down the road in talking about the need to move to an economy that is circular than here in the States. I mean, gosh, we're in the middle of a presidential campaign. I don't know if the word circular economy has made it into any rally conversation ad. It's just not on the radar here. Even though there are plenty of groups and people, individuals who are supportive of it. So.
Yeah, and the word green, I feel like, has been thrown around a lot, and like one could argue what the meaning of the word green is. Like, I think reduce, reuse, recycle, repairability, those are synonymous with green. So
yeah,
it kind of blows my mind because right to repair really supports some of that sustainability too. We're just not seeing it, or maybe we're not emphasizing that as much as we should.
What's so funny about it too is it's such a political winner. I mean, you look at Massachusetts update to its 2012 auto repair bill that expanded it to include telematics, right? 2020 ballot measure, almost 75, 3/4 of people voted for it, 74%. And that was in the face of tens of millions of dollars in negative advertising from the automotive industry to kill it, to defeat it.
Yeah.
Did not matter. Maine had a ballot measure that in 2023, frankly, the automotive industry didn't even bother to run ads because I think they realized it doesn't matter. Like there's so much support for these.
That's right.
83% of voters voted yes. So you're like, man, if you're a politician, how many issues are you going to get 83% of people to vote for?
None.
And this is one of them. I just don't understand why you're not jumping on that and being like, I'm just going to ride this horse all the way, to the finish line.
Yeah.
Because it is something with bipartisan support, red, blue, left, right, people, just consumers, business owners just absolutely see the need for it and support these laws. Who doesn't support it is the kind of, corporate interests that have determined that, this is a threat to our business model. But yeah, I mean, it's not a part of our conversation right now politically. I don't really understand why. But, yeah.
We have really big hopes for the next administration, and we're so close with this federal bill HR
Mhm.
906, the Repair Act. I think it's
The
got
Repair Act, yeah.
nearly 60 co-sponsors, completely bipartisan. A Noah's Ark strategy, if you will, right? One on each side, all the way down. Tons of support, but we're running out of time. I think September is the last chance that we have to get this bill to the floor for a vote. We're really hoping for that support. We just need a gust of wind. So, if anybody listening can help us get that floor to a vote, this is our plea, right? This is our last chance before we got to
Absolutely.
start this all over
Call
again.
your rep. Yeah, call your rep. It is. I mean, I had the honor of testifying in front of the House subcommittee that was considering that bill in July of 2023. They had a hearing on what is there a right to repair? I think is the name of the hearing. But the Repair Act was kind of front and center for that hearing. And like I've said, if you watch that hearing, it's very hard to tell who's Democrat, who's Republican. There seemed to be just a general attitude of support, and lo and behold, the bill made it out of that subcommittee, and went to the full House committee, and it was Energy and Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sitting there, and this happens so often. I think it's part of the reason people get a little cynical sometimes is because you got a bill here with a lot of support, bipartisan support, consumers support it. So why isn't it becoming law?
Yeah. There's a lot of otherworldly powers at force, maybe.
And that makes people cynical. I mean, it does. Like, okay, so somebody's got a veto here who, isn't a elected rep and isn't a voter. So, but I do feel like if voters really make it clear, like we want to see this thing get done. Write the email, make the phone call, show up to the local, when your reps come back home to talk to people, make it clear that that it matters to you. I mean, my reps are Catherine Clark and Elizabeth Warren in the Senate.
Yeah.
So I'm preaching to the choir, but not afraid to bring it. Sometimes it's just about, hey, bring this to your attention and making it clear that it needs to be on your docket.
Yeah, absolutely. And Elizabeth Warren did some great work. She was, questioning NHTSA and some of the agencies about their statements on right to repair. She's visited repair shops to hear directly from them about the issues. So we do appreciate that. And those are important steps towards getting a resolution. Really important steps.
This case in Massachusetts, we passed that law in 2020, and it got challenged in court. Went to this judge, and it's been sitting there for 3 years. Basically, hasn't been any action of any kind in almost a year. It really is. It's hard to wrap your head around what's been happening here, and the result in Massachusetts is very complex because our new Attorney General Andrea Campbell is enforcing the law.
Right.
But automakers have been saying, well, we're not going to comply with it, because there is no clear ruling from the courts, even for them to appeal. So it's just kind of a messy situation. And, we'll see what happens with it. Hopefully we'll get a decision out of that court sometime soon.
Yeah. I mean, it's very clear that the will of the people definitely prevails when it comes to passing the laws. We can get a little discouraged sometimes. We say, the manufacturers are just trying to delay, deny, distort. That's the 3Ds. And anytime a law gets passed, whether it's automotive or other industries, there seems to be some sort of interference. They come in, they try to change some of the original parts of the law to be a little bit more in favor of what they want. I think we saw that with John Deere, maybe a little bit with that electronics bill in New York. And then we had some interference in automotive in Maine as well. So what's your take on that? And is there any way to avoid that? Because it blows my mind that you could pass a law people say, this is what I voted for. And then after it gets passed, it's like, well, we're going to change just a couple little minor things that maybe aren't so minor to some of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's part of the democratic process that sometimes laws get passed that have unintended consequences and do need to be, revised time, but to try and do that before the law has even taken effect and you've identified those problems. Yeah, I mean, that did happen back in 2012 with the original auto repair law, where the legislature kind of modified it before it was finally, enacted, which, has been okay in the last 12 years. But, I think in general, yeah, we need, I think we need a way to, I really feel like this is just a matter of, people being able to, connect with their representatives and make it clear what their priorities are and
Mhm.
what their needs are. And, I do think that, lawmakers, both at the state and federal level, hear a lot from, lobbyists and industry representatives and so on. It is harder to hear from the small independent repair shop or auto body shop, because they're working all week long. They don't have the time on a Wednesday afternoon to go spend 4 hours and at
Yeah.
the state house talking to representatives. And that dynamic, I think, really affects the way these conversations happen, and it can make the needs of those small business owners or families or whatever kind of diminish. I'd like to think there's a fix for that. I don't know what it is, but I would really, like you said, I would really love to see some changes that make it easier for, representatives, whether at the state or federal level, to connect with and hear from their constituents. Definitely at the federal level. I mean, at the state level, I feel like it's a little less of an issue. Definitely at the federal level.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw hundreds of repair shops talking to their legislators, hosting them in the shop itself, having their
Yeah.
employees talk to them, or going to their office. And, I get it. It can be intimidating. Maybe I don't want to get involved in politics. I don't want to seem like I'm on a particular side, or I don't know what I'm supposed to say to a legislator, right? Like that's
Yeah.
really intimidating. But when you start to explain to people, it's not about what side of the aisle you're on. It's about, what does this mean to you? What does it mean to your business? And what does it
Yes.
affect? You humanize it. You humanize it a
Yeah.
lot. Do you drive a car? Yeah. Do you want to be able to, get in your car and get to the place where you need to go, cost effectively and efficiently? Yeah. Okay. So that's what my business does. And this law hurts my business. So things like that are very, or the education that we're trying to give to people and really get down to that grassroots level to keep this movement going where it needs to go. So
Absolutely.
do you think, I mean, the bills that have passed so far, we've seen automotive, we've seen electronics, and we've seen agriculture. Were
Mhm.
there any like commonalities between any of those that you think made them so successful? Because I think like cybersecurity probably came up in all of them, right? And the
Yep.
manufacturer said, well, someone's going to hack this cell phone, someone's going to hack this tractor, someone's going to hack this car. But ultimately, those arguments were defeated, right?
Yes, they were. They were. In some cases, like I'm thinking about Minnesota's law and New York's law, there were some last minute additions to those laws, kind of language thrown in at the very last minute to kind of, accede to what I think are basically kind of baseless arguments, around cybersecurity. So, but by and large, yes, those arguments didn't win the day as they did for the preceding years. They didn't result in the bill dying in committee. Um, Honestly, I think what distinguishes each of the bills that passed was that in each of those states, you had reps or senators or both, bill sponsors who were willing to stick their neck out and put political capital on the line and basically see these things through. They
Yeah.
not only sponsored the bill, they really believed in it.
Mhm.
And they burned some political capital. They,
Yeah.
they got it done. And I think that is the commonality between, diverse states like, New York, Minnesota, Colorado, Oregon, California, like, was just that, just having a sponsor or sponsors who just saw it through. and got it done. Use their connections, use your experience to settle those questions, to tamp down the what ifs and the, oh my God, it's going to be a disaster, and just see it through. That's both encouraging and sobering, because as you know, in a given state, or a given legislature, you might not have that person who has both the connections, but also the political will and kind of passion to get it done. And if you don't have that person, then the chances of that bill languishing or dying in committee are much higher.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, when you talk to legislators and you learn more about what else is important to them, and they've got other constituents who are arguing on other sides of the coin. So trying to understand both sides of this coin, both sides of the story, can be really difficult. And them supporting your bill could be political suicide for them, but it's important to the people and what is right for all of the people in their district, right?
Yeah, I think there's a familiarity issue too. And I think that's why we saw years of failure. And then all of a sudden this switch, in 2022, 2023, like all of a sudden, like, oh, we're getting bills passed. And I think some of that is just legislators getting familiar with this issue and not being like, right to repair, like what, kind of understanding what the bill is about, having the conversations that they're going to have, both pro and con, and settling on, whether they're for or against it, or whether it's important for them or not. And so I do think that there is time is on our side in that way, of like, the more every year that these get reintroduced, legislators have to engage with it, get a little bit more comfortable with it, maybe also start to understand the consequences of not doing anything, that we're seeing in states like Massachusetts, or we're seeing them with, higher, repair costs for vehicles. We're seeing them with this problem of abandonware and brick devices. You bought a smart device 18 months ago, the Spotify car thing, and now all of a sudden it's basically a $300 paperweight, and you're like, how did that happen? So some of the, technology is driving change really quickly. Legislation moves really slowly. And I think it can be sometimes hard for legislators to grasp what we're even talking about or what the stakes are. But as time goes by, I think that picture starts to take shape for them, and it can be easier to get past the, wait, what are you talking about? And what is this? And get to the, like, okay, here's what I support. Here are my conditions. And what's up.
Exactly. And I think that's probably the reason why I'm so happy that so many other industries, unfortunately, they're dealing with right to repair, but because they're dealing with right to repair, they've heard about it in some other industry. So it used to be that you would go and have a conversation on the Hill and talk about right to repair, and they're like, what? But now we go into offices and we talk about it, and they're like, oh, you mean tractors, right? We're like, no, the cars, please, the cars, and the trucks. But the familiarity with it is definitely increasing, thanks to all these other industries that have been going through it. So, a rising tide raises all boats. And, while it's an issue, it's a good thing that we're able to surface this issue and make it much more prevalent.
And cars are kind of the canary in the coal mine for this, right? I mean, auto right to repair was the first right to repair law of any kind in this country, in Massachusetts back in 2012. So in some ways, cars launched this whole conversation. The auto industry launched this whole conversation. And I do think, as you know, this is a much bigger conversation than just, your right to fix your own car. Like, the types of exclusive, monopolistic ecosystems that manufacturers are certainly looking to create, where, hey, it's a walled garden and we're the only company that can access, service, maintain, update, repair this device because, hackers, or, you can't trust independent repair people. Like, that ecosystem, that business model could very easily be replicated from cars to agricultural to medical devices to home appliances to you name it. And if we allow it to, it will. But that's going to be a disaster for consumers, and a disaster for our economy, and a disaster for, the environment. And so, I do feel when I talk to legislators the need to sort of call out like this train is coming down the track, and this is not a conversation that's limited to cars or agricultural equipment. Like this could affect every corner of our economy, and have huge costs for us if we don't, enact the types of smart laws as we did 100 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
The smart around aviation or automobiles or whatever to make sure that this is, that this technology continues to serve people, and serve all of us, not enslave us. Right?
Yeah. We don't want to live in iRobot.
We do not. Yeah. So yeah, or there's a movie Brazil that I did a talk at DEF CON a couple years back that kind of picked up on the Brazil theme, the Terry Gilliam film about the air conditioner repair, rogue air conditioner repairman, in this sort of dystopian future. So yeah, I mean, there are all kinds of kind of dystopian visions of what that future could look like, and our job is to not make those our reality.
Exactly.
This is DTP, IT Director and Sustainability Committee Staff Liaison at Auto Care Association. Are you passionate about shaping our industry's future? Join an Auto Care Association Advisory Committee and make a real impact. As a volunteer, you will drive innovation, tackle key challenges, and collaborate on cutting-edge solutions for the entire supply chain. Don't miss out. Join us at our upcoming Leadership Days event to start making a difference. Learn more at autocare.org/leadershipdays and find information on current committees at autocare.org/committees.
So I'm really glad that you mentioned that, automotive kind of set the precedent back in 2012 when the first right to repair law was passed. And that was in Massachusetts, Massachusetts. It's 12 years later. And here we are again with auto. We've got all these other industries that are making headway. Do you think that there's any other industry that is going to set a precedent for the future, for the next 10 years, for the next 20 years? Or do you think, it's whoever's first to the game?
That is a great question. So like you, I really hope that our lawmakers and policymakers, see the forest and don't get too focused on the trees. That we need comprehensive new laws, regulations that govern all manner of software-driven, connected, smart devices, because these problems stretch across all different product categories. I do think that that the battle that will be, the battle we're seeing right now over connected vehicles is at the forefront. I think the conversation is the most advanced around smart connected cars, both in terms of service and repair, also in terms of what types of data are these devices collecting, how are automakers using or repurposing or modifying, monetizing that data. Those are all conversations that I think apply equally well to all manner of other devices, but the conversation is very pointed right now in the automotive sector. So I think automotive is again the canary in the coal mine. I think automotive is where we're going to see the earliest battles around this. Other device categories or areas where I think you'll also see a lot of attention and probably regulatory focus. Obviously, smartphones and tablets, personal electronic devices, just because everybody's got them. They're in every household. You don't have to work too hard to get a lawmaker to understand about having options to repair his or her iPhone or whatever. Like, they get it.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be one. Things like kitchen appliances and so on, for sure. People understand that. In terms of legislation, and putting my cybersecurity hat on, in terms of some of the other issues that have come up as we're amidst, in this conversation around repairability, serviceability, resilience, medical devices are one where I think from a policy perspective, we've done the most or furthest down the road in terms of really trying to put some hard lines around and some structure around important issues like software security and software integrity and secure design, secure deployment. Medical devices and the FDA are way out in front of the rest of the government on that.
Really?
I'd love to see those same types of, policies applied across all different types of products, because right now it's real Wild West. You make a software product that you sell to people, whether it's businesses or individuals. There really are no laws or regulations that tell you that, it's got to be secure. The software has to be of high quality. Here's what your responsibility is to support it and maintain it. It's, again, you could sell a smart connected product to somebody for $300, $400, $500. 6 months later, you can brick it. You can basically say, "Yep, I'm done. I'm not going to, I'm shutting down the server. Sorry. Bring it to your local recycling center."
Oh my gosh.
There's no law. There's nothing that says that you can't do that to a consumer. And consumers are like, "What are you talking about? I just spent $500 for that." It's like, "Oh, well, yeah, I'm sorry. It doesn't, we looked at the numbers and it's just the product's not really selling the way we wanted it to." So,
it's insane.
It's insane. It's insane. And it's a reflection of the fact that, hey man, software is driving changes in the economy and in the consumer space that have gotten way ahead of our ability, of the regulations that we have around, warranties and things like that all go back to like the 70s and stuff. So there need to be changes, there need to be updates to those laws that just reflect the new reality of buying stuff. So, I do think I look at medical devices and I'm like, that's where we've seen some laws that are very forward looking or at least modern. But we need to get them applied to other types of stuff as well, including automobiles, honestly.
Yeah. And so technology is not going to slow down. It's only going to increase every single day. You've created something in response to this for the future, something called SURF. Tell us a little bit about that.
SURF, Secure Resilient Future Foundation. And you can find us online at the website secure-resilient.org. So this is a advocacy group that we set up, kind of an outgrowth of Secure Repairs, but really focused not just on right to repair, but on the broader issue of needing to foster both cybersecurity and resilience, and which includes repairability and maintainability, and the ability to continue reusing stuff, to sell it and exchange ownership. I mean, all this stuff that we sort of take for granted, but
I love that.
that we can't take for granted in the current environment. Yeah. So SURF is an advocacy group really for the cybersecurity community to have a seat at that policy table, and to, use our voice and our knowledge and expertise to help policymakers create and pass, forward-looking smart legislation. One of the issues that we're focused on kind of out of the gate, we're only a few months old, is around bricked and abandoned devices. Some people call abandonware. Just as I said, the ability of manufacturers to just walk away from smart devices. And we saw that actually just last week, I think, with Amazon kind of just saying that it was discontinuing this photo subscription for one of its Alexa devices, and which is basically the whole reason that people would have bought this device. Just we need policies, laws, regulations that protect consumers from that type of abuse or harm.
Yeah.
We saw it with the Spotify. We've seen it with Sonos speakers, all kinds of things. It potentially could be coming to, a car dealership near you where you spend an extra $2,000 for a, I don't know, some smart seat feature or something like that. And then the manufacturer says, "Yeah, we're not supporting that. Sorry, we're shutting down those servers. It's going away."
Could you imagine?
So we're focused on that issue, but others as well, including, just how do we clean up this software space? How do we get the organizations, the companies making smart connected stuff to emphasize things like resilience, cybersecurity, data security, produce high
Longevity.
quality, longevity, reusability, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what we're about.
I mean,
Yeah.
there was a time where you would buy a product and, people would brag about how long it lasted. And you
Yeah.
don't hear those conversations anymore. I love that you brought this up. I had a security camera in my house and I got an email and it said, this camera has reached its end of life. The software is no longer supported. And I went,
Yeah.
what? What do
Yeah.
you mean? The camera works. There's nothing wrong with it. But now you're telling me it's going to stop functioning. Oh, by the way, here's a discount on the new cameras. And I thought, no freaking way. Like, this
Right.
is not okay. And I can't imagine driving a car off the lot and having paid for something. And then at one day, it's not supported anymore. And I lose a feature or the car is bricked in abandoned. Like, that is a
Absolutely.
dystopian future.
It really is. And it's coming to you. It's coming to a place near you. The question is, and this is one of the things that SURF is going to help to try and work out, is what is the proper policy response to that, right? So you can be pretty sure, whether that's, some requirement on how long you support a device, and also some notion of what one of our board members, Tara Wheeler, calls a graceful handoff. So if you as a company make the decision that is yours to make as to whether you want to continue supporting a product or not, that's fine. But if you're not going to support it, if you're walking away from it, here's what you need to do, right, to make it right with your customers, to make it right with the community, whether that's open sourcing the software, whether it's designating a third party to come in and continue maintenance and upkeep as you walk away. As I look at it now, if you're a company deciding, smart product, dumb product, what do we design and, what do we want to do? There's really nothing on the don't make it smart side of the scales, right? I mean, you can make a smart product, have recurring revenue via monthly subscriptions, have a whole bunch of cool smart features that are going to make it more saleable to the public. And then on the no side, there's nothing. You can brick it in 6 months if it doesn't work out. You have no obligations to your customers. You can just walk away from it. So why not make it smart? With a more balanced approach, they might say, well, listen, okay, we want to make this toaster a smart toaster, but if we make it a smart toaster, we're going to need to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to need to support the software for, 8 years. We're going to need to have a, clean handoff after we end support to a third party, or make it open source, make the software open source.
Wow, yeah.
We're going to have to continue providing, parts and diagnostic software and updates for, this period of time. And so now we're looking at, I don't know, maybe we'll just make it dumb, or we'll make it smart, but we'll understand what our obligations are. We have rights to walk away from it, but we have responsibilities too. And right now that there is no, that conversation doesn't happen within companies because there's no downside. So it's kind of, just getting that balance in place so that consumers are protected, communities are protected, governments are protected. From the downside of just, companies just walking away from them. So,
it doesn't seem like an unreasonable conversation, right? Like this,
it doesn't.
Should be simple.
No. Look at every industry. Look at every industry that we rely on. Look at the aviation industry, right? And all the or the automotive industry, all the regulations that we have had to implement over the decades to make those safe, reliable, high quality, to protect consumers, to protect the public. So we've seen this movie before.
Yeah.
What's changed, I think, is just the rate of change and evolution, and just the way that technology and the internet and now AI are just accelerating that.
Yeah.
And that's really challenging for any organization, any government. Again, the policy conversations tend to happen a lot more slowly, but the change is happening really quickly.
Yeah, it is. And it's not going to stop. So this is why it's so important. We're so thankful for people who are passionate like you and all the other folks at Security Ledger. What you're doing at SURF, it's incredibly important. So the more people, the more voices we have, the more experts on this, the better. And like, we thank you for your passion and all the time that you give to all of these industries. It matters to a lot more people than.
Well, let me throw it back to you and say I'm really thankful for the Auto Care Association and all that you all have done to support right to repair, not only with automobiles, but the efforts that you have made, I think, have had spillover effects outside of the automotive industry. So
thank you.
I'll throw that back to you and say thanks for your work.
It's a historical time for sure, and it will continue.
It is, yeah. Yeah. Huge changes going on, and changes beget these types of conversations. Where you have people who are saying, "Hey, we need to put some guardrails in here, and we need to kind of protect people, protect consumers, and protect the environment." And that's what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Paul, where can folks find you if they want to connect with you? They want to subscribe to you, social media. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to see some of the work that you're doing and also get involved.
Okay. If you're a security professional, cybersecurity professional, information security professional, IT professional, check out securerepairs.org. I got my URL right there on my name, and join us. Add your name to our list, and we will reach out to you if we've got hearings happening in your state, and you can help out both on the auto repair side and electronics repair as well. So if you're an IT cyber professional, securerepairs.org. If you are interested in the kind of getting involved in the policy discussion around abandonware and kind of smart cyber policy, the Secure Resilient Future Foundation, secure-resilient.org is where you should go. And if you want to follow the right to repair conversation, fighttorepair.news is a Substack that I help edit, and we do like a weekly newsletter that just provides all the links to cool right to repair stories that are happening around. And we do some original reporting and podcasting as well.
The Substack is phenomenal, if I might say so. So please subscribe. It's definitely worth the time. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Stacey, I really, really appreciate it, and look forward to coming back. And hey, man, we get Repair Act. I'll come back and do a little end zone dance here with you. Happy to do that. Let's do it. Fingers crossed. Absolutely. But call your representative, call your senator. Let's get this done.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Auto Care on Air. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so that you never miss an episode. And don't forget to leave us a rating and review that helps others discover our content. Auto Care on Air is a production of the Auto Care Association, dedicated to advancing the auto care industry and supporting professionals like you. To learn more about the association and its initiatives, visit autocare.org.